Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from Mason Works Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with Chuck, Chuck Swedrock. Hey, Swedrock.
Right.
I said it wrong. And the phone's ringing.
Yeah, it was buzzing.
Oh, gosh. We
Yeah.
tried to make this smooth. Oh, well. Okay. So, Chuck, I am so excited to have everyone learn about ISCO and ions and all about you because you have so many years of experience with the near-death experiencers and the research and the study of it. And you probably should be writing a bunch of books. And that's just my way of looking at it. But so tell us how you got interested in this whole near-death studies.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you, Kathy. This is a privilege, and I thank you for making this opportunity available. Yeah, I have a YouTube out there. I was giving a talk to a retirement community in California, and next thing I knew, it was up on YouTube, and they said, okay, there it is. But I had to take it off and kind of re-edit it. So my version is A Life Guided by Experiences - and my name, Chuck Swedrock. And that kind of gives people the background, starts with a little philosophical stuff and a little bit of overview of ions. And yeah, it mentions that book, Evolution Angel.
Which is so weird that we both know this book. And I mean, honestly,
yeah,
how many people in the world know it? 100?
Yeah, it's there are a couple of books which really are second tier. It's got going up. Michael Newton's work with A Journey of Souls. That's one. The woman from she was in Iraq and her vehicle was hit by a roadside bomb, and she wrote this book, which is memory will bring it back to me hopefully at some point. Anyhow, those are just a step above the ordinary. There's no such thing as ordinary in these experiences, but sort of the entry level to the phenomena. And so one of the things you asked me how I got into it, I guess there's one pivotal little story I'll share here.
Okay.
It's about 1980-ish, and I'm a young man starting my professional career in technology as a systems programmer for a large corporation. And I just had this appointment one day with a dentist. And I always joke that going to the dentist is a little like a near-death experience, but they usually gets a familiar chuckle out of it. But I showed up. It was just to have some fillings replaced, or say just, if there's any just. The hygienist prepped me with cotton rolls, rubber dams, metal clamps. I'm a captive audience. And he then appears and gives a couple of shots of Novocaine, and he's waiting for it to take effect. And he gives this anecdote of shopping the day before for a daughter buying furniture, and he met a salesman at this store, and the salesman tells the dentist he had just returned to work after being hospitalized with a cardiac condition. Like I say, it's about 1980, and I maybe have heard the term near-death experience, but it's not on my horizon. I'm a young man developing a career. I have a couple of young daughters, and just a lot on the mind. But here's something I'm meant to hear, obviously. And so the salesman tells the dentist that while he was in the hospital, his heart stopped. They had to revive him with the paddles. And he had this experience of going into the light and meeting beings he felt were deceased relatives. Now, at some point, I look up, and the hygienist who's listening to this intently her face is just rigid with fear. And for some reason, I'm feeling captivated. Wow, oh, this is, well, the dentist or the salesman tells the dentist that the beings he met were deceased family members, and they introduced him to other beings there, member of his deceased family, that he had no prior knowledge of before this experience.
Oh, wow. Didn't even know they existed.
And that after he's resuscitated and recovered and does the research, he authenticated these identities in the family tree or background that he had no prior knowledge of. Well, about that time, the dentist pinches my gum, goes to work, and leaves. The hygienist cleans me up and leaves. And what do you do? I say, well, I was kind of left with question marks in the eyeballs, as I say. This is before the internet. It's not, just go Google, So, but obviously indelibly left an impression. And I just felt it was so interesting that there was corroboration to the man's experience that stuck with me. So then my path, 1985, it's August 15th, my most significant experience. It's a hot, humid day in upstate New York. I'm mowing the yard. I come in. I'm cleaning up at the sink. I have daughters 6 and 9 somewhere in the area playing. They're inside for the air conditioning. And the phone rings on the other side of the counter. My wife answers it in a couple of sentences. It says, "It's for you, it's your dad," which was code for my stepfather. My stepfather was my dad from the time I was 5 years old. And so I tried to have him. So I said hello, and there was no preparation. I said hello. His words were, "David killed himself."
Oh my God.
I mean, just total shock, total unexpectation. David being my youngest brother, his youngest child.
Oh.
And I just immediately broke out, in denial and sobbing, and for a while I would reflect and say, well, if you'd given me some preparation, I might have been able to be a little bit more semblance of dealing with the information with my 2 daughters right there, seeing their dad just, later I realized it was really best they should see an honest reaction to such a significant message. So I just put everything on hold, threw some stuff in a suitcase, and drove the 4 hours back to Pennsylvania. Now, arriving there, my brother had come home from a wedding, obviously despondent. He had gone to a gun cabinet, got a high-powered rifle. He went up to his bedroom and put the muzzle under his chin, and my parents are sitting in the bedroom. They're in the living room right below his bedroom, and hear what they think to be a backfire. This is a rural, very country-oriented. There's like crossroads there with maybe 24 homes.
Wow.
And so my dad goes up to check, in shock, says, "Dorothy, you got to see this." And everybody says, "Oh, how awful." But knowing my mother, if he tried to keep her out, she'd have fought him tooth and nail, thinking she could make a difference. And so there was instant resolution. Now, as I'm arriving there 4 hours later, that's what churches are for. I grew up in this independent Bible church, Baptist by every definition, 2 lots over from our house. My mother was the organist for 40 years. And they had showed up before I got there. They'd cleaned up the bedroom, taken the furniture, burned it. The only thing left was a bullet hole in the wall, and they covered it up with a picture. And I constantly want to remind folks that's what churches are for: community. It's not about the beliefs that always wind up being he said, she said, and they said. No one has a consistent view of it, even though they try.
Yeah.
Even in that kind of an environment. but it's who we are for each other in the time of need. So the week went through, they were bringing us meals. Now the ambulance had come, gotten the body and taken to it, a little town, about 7 miles away. And they, it was a closed casket service, closed, and then through internment. So I'm there for about a week, and then I return home. And I call my confidant at the time was my stepmother. And she says, you need to say goodbye to your brother. And I realized other than that, an instantaneous grief response, I had just kind of suppressed trying to figure this out, other than the feelings of guilt, which is I should have been able to make a difference. How couldn't I not reached out to him? I mean, my brother had been out on his own trying, another sibling had trying to give him a out of the house kind of training and source for an income, but he just returned home, and I think he just felt incomplete for some reason. So I found a quiet time. I wasn't really a practicing meditator, but I have an easy chair in the bedroom, and I remember the reclining in it, and the fabric. I always feel it when I tell this story. And I closed my eyes and I let the thought go through my mind, goodbye, David. Instantly, my thought, my mind, my identity went back to Pennsylvania, back to that neighboring town where they took the body. It's a little graphic for a moment, but bear with me. Even more graphic. Okay. I went in, I was thrust into the back of the funeral home where I'd never been physically, to a casket sitting on a gurney, thrust through the side of the casket into the space on the torso where there should be a face. And I'm bilocating, I'm aware of my body back in that easy chair, just horrible, like a fit, total fit, arms thrashing, legs, fear. At the pinnacle of this experience, a male voice, not a thought, a male voice, as though there's somebody 3 feet away, spoke into my mind with 3 words: he's not here.
Wow.
And there was total serenity, total peace. I'm reunited with my body. And certainly processing that going forward is where I lost my fear of death.
Wow.
And then a little bit later after that, my marriage ended for other reasons. And then I wound up searching for a while and found the Unity Church. And they said, this man is going to come and talk to us about his near-death experience. Boom, I'm going to be there. And I showed up to hear a gentleman that maybe some of you will remember. If you haven't and you're in this genre from a different angle, I certainly recommend you look up the books about him. His name was Tom Sawyer. And what Tom Sawyer learned from dying, somebody else wrote the book for him. But it was 2 jaw-dropping hours of just listening to the details of his experience. And Ken Ring, who studied many experiencers,
right,
and is one of the founders of IONS and ran what was called the Near-Death Hotel in Connecticut next to his, his job at the university, was he'd have people come stay with him and share their experiences. And Tom, he said, and he wrote about Tom anonymously in his book, Lessons from the Light. That's Tom's experiences are featured in there. And what he said about Tom was the most psychic individual he ever encountered in the after effects of a near-death experience.
Well, I think everyone I've met, almost every single person that I've met that's had a near-death experience or a spiritually transformative experience, it's like it activates their superpowers. Because either the barrier to you being whole and complete and activated to everything you can do is released, or the fear, whatever the conscious stopping you from having those experiences, they're released. But well, I just want you to know that Deepak says hello, Zana says hello, Elsie, hi Elsie, and
Wow.
Terry, you're here. Yes, and Terry says surrounding you with love, Chuck.
Well, thank
So,
you. I should
yeah, yeah.
This
So,
is such a joy to be able to share this. I don't know, I hope some of you may have caught. If not, you can go out to ISGO and find the recording for our talk last night in Israel, where we had uh, Hila, Hila Baruch, Baruch, an Israeli woman who's founded a IONS group there in Israel, the first one, and she shared her near-death experience last night. It's just totally gripping.
I want to explain some more because I think I've been bringing on people that are have these incredible stories, and I know that my audience, a lot of them have had spiritually transformative experiences, but and I don't believe you have to have a near-death experience in order to be able to benefit. Thank goodness.
Okay, this will bring me to a philosophical point.
Okay, please do.
That I think the use of those labels can be barriers,
Okay.
and I think we need to sort of melt the barriers because Bruce Grayson is another one of the founders of IONS and a psychologist. He doctor of psychiatry. He he has distinguished experiences because when we get down to, there's one basic question: well, what's truth, and how do you tell whether somebody is hallucinating or having some sort of trip for whatever induced reason versus one of these extraordinary, and they're not really extraordinary either. That's just because we're not used to them. They are ordinary as we study them. There's more and more in thousands and millions. We know that. Anyhow, how do you distinguish? And then for a long time, coming from a Christian background, I couldn't trust the thought of mediums. It was like they can make it up. You listen to a stage medium and they say, well, I have somebody here with the letter B or R, and yeah, they're fishing, and eventually they can get something that sounds like a message. Well, now I've grown and matured, and I have reasons to understand the authentic versus the manufactured experiences. And so going back to Dr. Grayson, he created a set of the attributes of each kind of experience. Let's say a hallucination versus a near-death or near-death-like experience. And there's two columns of the attributes or the features of each.
Okay.
And then if you put them in a circle, a Venn diagram it's called, there'll be areas where they overlap. They got similar features.
Vesica Pisces.
Yeah, and there will be those attributes which stand alone. And the simplest one in this particular comparison is a near-death experience, or it's like the details don't vary over time, unless in terms of the physical nature of how it occurred and where it happened and all that. The ephemeral pieces are always a little more vague, where people are saying, well, it was like, but there's no human words for it. It's etheric. However, the illusions, they fade, they vary, and sometimes over time they're not even remembered. So, I mean, there are ways to discriminate, but I think the biggest analytical tool you can bring to it is, how does it touch you?
Right.
Where does it touch you?
Right.
And you will know when somebody. Now, there are other problems with that approach because judgment gets involved. and people start to judge the values that are portrayed by an experiencer. And that's can be problematic because experiencers don't become perfect little automaton angels. They are still human and they still step on people's toes. And, you know,
Yeah.
I'm an advocate that always take a look at both sides of the question. And that's the training I got as a child. I was in 15 different care settings from the time I was born till I was 5 years old.
Wow.
Moved around, different people involved, you know. And what it teaches you is you're always on the alert. Well, what are my surroundings at this moment? Because it's going to make a difference. I mean, there's other outcomes of that, which took me a while to work out of the,
Yeah. It's like PTSD.
the deficit category. But the strength category was, if I always kind of use the analogy, if the ship is sinking and everybody goes to one side, I go to the other side because I have to see both views.
Right.
I have to look at stuff from multiple angles. And so that's what I recommend that folks do.
Okay.
And don't be concerned about this barrier of is it an NDE or is it an SDE? It's a human experience. It may be a synchronicity. It's so simple.
Right. Well, I don't find that I worry about it being true or not. I like the imagination that it sparks for me, the creativity and imagination, because a lot of times you don't have words for things, especially anything spiritual, really deep spiritual work doesn't have words. So, but I that's one of the things I've really enjoyed about being a member of IONS is you have people of like mind that they're in their heart because they've experienced God, the beyond, whatever, and then come back. And so that memory, once you've been touched with that memory, you're forever changed.
Right. And
right? So, well, tell us. Okay, so Jacqueline said Chuck Swedrock is an in-person. I gotta put my glasses on. I don't want to, but anyway, is an in-person historian on near-death experiences. Thanks, Jacqueline.
Well, you remember I was saying that Ken Ring had the near-death hotel. I've had the near-death bed and breakfast. And
yeah, tell us about your group, because you have one of the. Well, right now you're not meeting in person, but you've had one of the biggest IONS groups in the world in your area. Could you talk a little bit about that? And if it's not too hard to put it in, what the best stories you've heard from there?
Oh, you're testing me. All right.
I want to know.
No. I'm just saying because I don't know if there is a best one. They're just endless examples of things. No, I say near-death bread and breakfast because when we would bring a speaker to town, and all the prominent ones that you hear about, Anita Morjani and Jeff Olson, the names of that caliber, you know, they've come here. We're not PMH. We haven't had her yet. But anyhow, they stand in front of an audience for an hour, hour and a half. They talk, they answer questions, maybe do some book signings, and then they disappear. Occasionally they go out to dinner and a few people congregate. But I would have them stay in my condo, and we clean out the master bedroom and turn it over to the experiencer and their partner if they brought someone. But then you have more, a whole day or two of contact, and you get some of the stories that don't come out from the stage.
Yeah.
Because the deeper things can take you into areas that, this opens you up. It stretches you over time. So I don't know about being a historian, but I definitely have been exposed to a huge variety. And so I get lots of that multiple perspective criteria with try to fit the pieces together. Now you asked for the most significant. Oh my.
Well, I see. I think that if people are just being introduced to this organization, I'm lucky. Because of Jackie, I found IONS probably 5 years ago,
Yeah, I remember you came and did the filming at one of our leader seminar.
Yep, yep. But I was a member before that. So anyway, but because of Jackie. Anyway, I'm just fascinated with all of this. And again, if you're looking for community that has a giant heart, this is the group.
Yeah. Well, you held up a book. I want to hold up a book.
Okay. Okay.
This is a book that IANS helped produce. It was written by some 3 authors from the Netherlands, and then a principal member of our organization, Robert Mays, found the document, and he worked with them and added another dozen cases. They had like about 89 or so cases, and now it's over 100. And it just has the subject dealt with from multiple levels, and the question of the self does not die. I take a look at it now and say, it used to be that we were on defensive with the materialists to say, well, these are just senses and there's just memories, or there are aberrations and mixtures of chemicals in the mind. And this book tells you, well, it's a little more than that. We have an evidence, like the salesman finding extended family members he never knew of before his near-death experience. That's called veridical perception, evidence that's verifiable after the fact. So that book is full of it. And what I say with that book is we all have a responsibility, especially at this time with COVID, Black Lives Matters, all the upheaval in our world, the climate. Every one of us has a responsibility, if we can help to eliminate a little bit of fear.
Exactly. Perfect.
That's what we're doing. And that's what IANS is. That's what a book like that is. If you think there's somebody that can benefit from that book or the book that you held up, it's our responsibility to kind of get them in touch with it. We don't become
I could get up much more books. I have so many. Well, what happens is, I think once you start to feel this beautiful energy, you just want to experience it, but you also want to hear the story, because the story helps you fill in the dots on your story, and it helps you open your compassion for all beings. It's a very different experience. This isn't where there's a guru and you're following the guru, and whatever the guru says, you up level, and it's a experience. This is your experience, your journey, and it opens the door to that. And every single person I've heard has opened the door a little more in a different way. Some of them is like, because there's the reason why I was asking about your favorite story is because you've heard more than probably anyone. Well, I don't know, Robert might have heard more, but well, it's the thing is, it's researched. This isn't hearsay. This isn't myth. This isn't passed down story that gets changed over and over again. This is people not knowing what to call their experience, meeting other people and going, that's it. Now I can finally tell my story. I haven't told my story. And so the experiencer lounges and the way people create community around this, it's remarkable.
Yeah, our fundamental principle in ISGO, IANS Sharing Groups Online, is non-judgment. Create the safety for people to share. What's said here stays here. If somebody's sharing, we ask them to share from the first person. In other words, not to be proselytizing. No one has all truth.
Right.
No one in one of these apparatus has all truth.
Right.
So we're sharing and learning from each other. And if we don't agree with somebody's position, that's fine. The language is difficult, the languaging of it. It was delightful listening to the woman from Israel last night as she shared when she finally felt her spirit detached from her body. She said, because she has, her English was
interesting.
interesting. And she said she felt like she hatched.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just such a crisp picture of actually, yes, you're out of this body and totally free as a spirit. So it was delightful.
That's
Uh,
so cool. Well, okay, so tell us, because so you have had an IONS group for how many years?
we started 2010 with the in-person meetings, just a small group.
Okay.
And then we brought our first guest speaker, who was Howard Storm,
Oh,
on January 2011.
great. Okay. So then you've been a president, you've been on the board for a million years. How, well, no, I'm just trying to get so that people can understand ISCO and then our virtual conference. So, okay.
Okay, let's go there.
Okay. So ISGO, ISGO, how did you get that name?
I got a call from the office saying there's this woman in Sydney, Australia, who wants to start a group, and I was group's coordinator at the time. So I thought, okay, I'll contact her, and we were talking, and she said, my problem is I got people interested in my group, but I don't know where to meet because there's such a wide geographic distribution of their location. And we had been starting to use the GoToMeeting platform, I think it was, before the Zoom platform. And I said, well, why don't we try doing it online? So it was an experiment because we've been using them for the group leader meetings. So that we did a 5-month pilot. At the very first Zoom session, there were 12 people showed up. And there were 3 or 4 from Australia, I think a woman from New Zealand, a couple from Canada, and across the U.S., 3 in the U.S., Arizona and Mexico, or not Mexico, but Massachusetts. And, hey, wow, that was great. And a couple of people, and we went through the guidelines for the sharing, and a couple of people were used to sharing their experiences, opened up and started. And then a woman spoke up, and I think it was the one from New Zealand, and said, well, I had a little different kind of experience. Is it okay if I share? We said, oh, absolutely. That's why we're here. And she shared an alien abduction experience.
Wow.
And it was just as authentic in terms of touching you. Whether you agree with the reality of it was reality for her.
Right.
And we could be a support system for her. So it's not we're endorsing anybody's whatever. But up to this point in time, we were kind of in little closets. NDEs are in, UFOs are over there, a different bucket. We're not going to go that path or whatever. And so we had this community start because this gave others the confidence to share what they felt had been alien contact.
Wow.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have allowed themselves to bring it up. So then a couple of people spoke up and talked about negative or the dark experiences, because usually it's all about the love and the light. And yeah, we've got love here, everybody, no judgment. But it's harder to talk about something which doesn't fit the quote mainstream model.
Shadow side, right?
And so they spoke up, and this is what I talk about, having this innate desire to hear all sides of a discussion.
Okay.
So we're about to finish this very first meeting. We kind of just fell into this 90-minute format. And Nicole, she said, well, we've got about 15 minutes and I'd like to do a closing. Does anybody else have something they want to share? A woman spoke up, because in the group, we all just sort of introduce ourselves, but there's no insistence that you share. And she had not shared. And she shared an NDE that she had not had an opportunity to share with anyone that had happened within the last 2 years.
Wow.
That was our very first ISGO, or we didn't call it ISGO right away, but that was a pilot for what became ISGO. And that's my passion. I mean, I'm with the small groups. I mean, it's great to get the webinar and the mainstream speakers, and I certainly recommend you get the couple this weekend. Dynamic duo on Saturday, Kevin Tedeschi and Nancy Evans Bush, speaking of dark experiences.
Oh.
Powerful speakers, and if you can, make the time for it. If not, you can have the recording from that event. But
so
those are,
I just want to make sure people understand. So ISCO is an online arm of IONS. It's still part of IONS, but what they do is they feature, for very little cost, they feature amazing speakers and presenters that tell their story about their near-death experiences, or there's some spiritually transformative experiences too.
the whole game, and that's the point. The entry-level group is called a general sharing group. It's free for what we call subscriber members. That's IONS members supporting or higher level membership. The regular public, $5. And recognize that with ISCO and the virtual conference, we are having as an organization to struggle to make up for not having the mainstream in-person conference,
right,
which is a significant contributor to our financial, infrastructure.
Right.
So, but we're not here to make money. We are a nonprofit, and if you need a break, let me know. I'll get you coupons. I'll get you in the door. But there's 3 levels of meetings. So there's this general sharing session. Then there's a theme or topic session, which is a little more because it has a specialist who has a topic, like say nurses, or they're coming from a particular area to feature maybe mediumship or whatever. So the focus is on that, and they do more to prepare for it. And so we ask a little more, and we share the income from that with them.
Yeah.
And then there's the webinar, and then we're going to be having courses where you'll have multiple sort of classroom settings and cover topic in greater depth.
Well, I want to share that there are people that are asking. Zana asked, Chuck, I didn't get the full name of the woman from Israel. Zana, I think if you go to isco.ions.org, you'll be able to catch all of these people that Chuck is speaking about. That'll help you see all the variety of speakers and recordings that you
her recording won't be up for a couple of days, but her name is Hila, Hila Baruch. I'm, pardon my Israeli is deficient. Baruch, so Baruch. And it just, when you can get that recording, her energy will just grip you and carry you away.
That's what I found. Everyone that I've met just has beautiful energy, and they have so much to share. It's pure love. I mean, you really feel hugged. We can't hug right now, but we can nurture ourselves with this beautiful information very easily for very little. I mean, it doesn't cost hardly anything, and you're there. Now, Jackie also put Howard Storm will be you mentioned Howard will be a keynote speaker at the virtual conference. So why don't we talk a little bit about the virtual conference now and how ISCO is going to work with the virtual conference? And so right now I'm going to change out the URL and put our virtual conference information up. So people, I can't recommend this enough, you guys. This is, usually it's done in person, and of course with COVID we can't, but this is a game changer for you to get through this whole time period. There we go.
Okay, first thing about a conference, if you went to one in person, you'd have the schedule in front of you, and there is the single room kinds of session with the main, guest speaker and the, plenary speaker, they call it. And then it breaks up into sessions, and you have to choose. You have to go to one or the other room. And so maybe you get started and I say, that isn't for me, and you skip over to another room, whatever. But the online conference is really going to have a similar feel. There's going to be 4 tracks. There will be the featured speaker each day. It's Nita Morjani's story. I mean, we were the second group to have her featured here at a
Do you want me
talk.
to read her book too?
Huh?
I have her book too over there.
Yeah, I know her and Danny. That was so marvelous to have them, and that was a serendipity thing. We were trying to get in touch with them, and so we decided we were going to drive to California, where she was going to be talking for the California group, and so we already made that commitment, and we're headed out. And then they got in touch with it. We said, "Well, we want you to come to Arizona too." So
Perfect. Well, for those of you who don't know, Anita Morjani wrote a book, Dying to Be Me, and it's a Hay House book, and she was promoted heavily by Dr. Wayne Dyer. So if you haven't read that story, that it's remarkable what she went through. But anyway, I keep going. Sorry.
yeah, there are just marvelous stories of healing. These experiences healing, but not all are complete. And from our physical perspective, some of them are left with, after effects that drag on for years. So it's a question of finding the soul path that's buried within the human experience of that person.
Right.
And it really does carry along. And Nita's case is one of those miraculous healings overnight, terminal cancer that just disappeared.
Yes. And she was down to nothing. She was probably, I don't know, less than 90 pounds. And everyone had said goodbye, and she had her experience, and voila. And now,
okay, back to the virtual conference.
Yes,
so she's going to kick us off on Friday evening. Oh, it's August 14th, I think.
Yes.
Memory. And then the 15th, we'll have 4 tracks. It'll start off with the single speaker event, but we're going to have experiencer rooms, which we'll do like an Ian sharing group general session where people can gather and communicate over a Zoom platform and listen to each other's experiences and share, and we'll have trained facilitators running those experiencer rooms. And then there's a different track which has a nurses training program that will provide, they've applied for, I think, and Jacqueline can fill this in, maybe they're continuing education units, assuming that's affirmed, but the program itself is open to everyone.
Right.
So you'll be able to hear a lot of speakers coming to talk to nurses about this genre and how they can be operating in that environment, helping experiencers that they encounter in their practices.
Well, what I'm excited about is that because I have been to the physical conference, and this was a challenge to figure out how to keep that warm, loving community type of feeling with a virtual conference. But I think with what you're doing with ISCO, it's such an amazing opportunity because, first of all, you can open it up much easier to the whole world. I mean, I know in Philadelphia there were, I think, 100 people that still that didn't come, that watched the live stream. So there was live stream at the physical conference, but now this opens it up to everyone to experience it without the cost of a hotel, without the cost of airfare and food and all of that. And with what you're doing with ISCO, with having these experiencer rooms, you don't miss this chance to tell your story, because that's what I saw the first time I went to one of these conferences. People almost would like pull you aside and said, let me tell you what happened to me. They needed, as part of their soul, they needed to express it. I mean, they came to listen, but they also came to share and process.
The total benefit of this virtual conference over the in-person one, I mean, it's not the same as being in person. I'm not trying to say they're equal, But the benefit is that for 90 days, you can watch the sessions you didn't get to go to. So if you want to go to the experiencer room, you don't have to miss a thing because you can pick up the recording of the other events that are going on at that very same time.
That is a benefit.
And no extra cost. And believe me, the early bird special is $90, is a bargain. And it ends July 15th, as I recall.
Yep, it's coming up. It's coming up. So, well, it's still to have that much content that is so specialized. I mean, there's panels with these amazing people that have, I mean, most of these people are top notch in their field. This is not because this is not like going to a conference where there's no vetting of the speakers. Everyone that's in this event is top notch and world famous in a lot of cases. And so for us to have access all in one place and to be able, instead of watching Netflix or some junky stuff on YouTube, that you could watch this, and it's heart opening. It's really, this is what gives you hope, and knowing that there's so much more to us than what we know.
I will put a plug back in for ISCO that we run on a weekly basis, a sharing group on Sunday evenings, and then periodically at different times of the month, where you can get together and have this sharing experience. Try that out, and then you'll be even more equipped to do it at the conference with.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So Terry's asking, how would I connect to the room of people talking about their NDEs? I experienced mine in 2014.
Oh, I mean, at the conference, or?
Yeah, I think that's where
I was just saying, don't wait for the conference. If you want to do it this Sunday, you can find a meeting. If you go to isco.iance.org, we offer sharing group meetings, and you go to the search events or find an event, and it lists all the ISCO offerings.
I'm going to put it back up, Terry, and I think you'll find, no wonder I love you. We talk on Facebook all the time. No wonder. You'll see that this is a community that is not in judgment. There's not, everyone's there to support each other.
Yeah, and the thing that we absolutely will not do is debate somebody's experience. That's the facilitators are trained, the moderators are trained, that we keep it along the guidelines of the group. And that's different than Facebook chat and all this other opportunities where anybody with any notion of what's the truth will walk through the door and proselytize. But we're about sharing from the heart and making those connections.
And I find that it's a tremendous healing opportunity. That's why I was so excited that you could come on my show and share about ISCO, share about ION, share about the virtual conference, because I think we're coming to a point now. We had a worldwide fear pulse, and everyone reacted in their own way. Lots of people are still processing it. There's still a lot of inner work that can be done. It's a gift in a lot of ways if people see it that way. And there's all this content through ISCO and IONS that you can access that'll change your perspective on everything.
And happy to be there to talk to folks. And that's why those groups are so good. Because you can ask questions, we can explore things, but we're just not going to tear people's
Right.
experiences apart.
Right. Well, and the deeper, a lot of times people want to know why, and that may not be the first question, right? Why me? Why
is because, and that's where I share the Michael Newton work. Avoid judgment at all costs.
Beautiful.
And we had a speaker come to our Arizona group, was the film producer. I'm going to forget who it was. And he wanted to film Michael Newton doing one of his classes
Okay.
where Michael was training individuals to be therapists, to use his technique.
Okay.
Michael Newton stumbled into the concept of life between life planning, where people make agreements in their soul form to have major aspects of this life. It totally explains things like savants, somebody who can come in and play Beethoven at 3 years old. I mean, those kinds of things are really augmented and validated through Michael's work. Well, Michael was filmed hypnotizing a student and taking them back to where they entered their planning period before this life.
Wow, cool.
And she explained that she found herself at the point where she was leaving her past life as a victim in the Holocaust. And she said she rose up out of the ovens and they were a flame of light, she and all the other victims. And they were celebrating that they had accomplished their mission. They had been there because the Holocaust was one of the most consciousness-raising events on the planet at that point in our history. Now, we seem to have forgotten a lot of lessons from that, but Spirit has a way of reminding us. But what she said last is what stuck with me and what I would hope you will hear me. She said it was harder to have chosen the life of a victim. I mean, it was harder to have chosen the life of a perpetrator than that of a victim. That the individuals who agreed to the life to be pushing people into the ovens had to be part of the drama, the play.
Right.
And their gift to us was having helped make that happen. So the judgment that we can, as humans, have, I mean, let's just say our current political environment. How many people have a judgment of the current president?
Right, right.
Ooh, that's pretty easy to do because his foot is on his tongue every time he turns around, it feels like.
Well, I don't want to go there.
It is giving attention to a lot of stuff that all of us need to step back from and evaluate. Oh, I want to know who I am. Yep. And not just be drawn automatically into some mindset because so-and-so said so.
Well, what this, I want to make sure everyone knows, thank you for the comments, and Terry said thank you, and Amanda said thank you. So basically, and Amanda said that was very powerful. What I want everyone to know is that the opportunity to be a part of something that supports you virtually is here, and it's real. It's guided by people that have been doing this for a long time. It was insightful for IONS to start an online community project before the pandemic. So they already had things in place. They already have a plethora of amazing talent to share with you. And then the conference, Jackie Arnold is the head of the conference committee, and she has just done an amazing job of bringing in the most incredible speakers. I mean, this is as good, if not better, than an in-person conference. And so I highly recommend both things. I recommend ISCO and the virtual conference. I think once you get hooked on this, you will see life differently. You'll see yourself and your experiences with others in a totally different way. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's putting that, we all only have this moment. And so if we're in fear, if we're under stress, we sometimes run to that side of things which make us not give the best answer for how we could use this moment. first starts with self-love, not judging self. I like to start each day with a conscious attempt to have a clean slate. It doesn't mean I give up my memories of what I need to accomplish or how I might have certain tasks to undertake, but I don't want to have an agenda with anyone that isn't start from a forgiving, loving place. And that can be very difficult because that person who pushes your button, and I've had a few, and I've lost it as much as anybody, Jackie will tell you that, it's easy to philosophize, but that's my philosophy, to try to get to that place as often as I can. And then to give my energy to spirit, all that is. Use me in the most effective manner, even if I don't. And time and again, it happens.
Yes.
For me, the synchronicity has been the clock recently. I forget what it was, the incident, but I looked up and it was like I saw 7 ones because one o'clock was 11:11 and the other was 11:10. It hadn't shifted to the 11:11. And it's just, oh, wow, just at a very poignant moment in what I was working on. I just took it to be, oh, that's no accident.
Right.
I was given a nudge that I was doing something headed in, a positive direction.
Attaboy.
Yeah, a spiritual attaboy. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. And so we are not alone. We have lots of help. This whole COVID time period, there's opportunity for great healing from this pause before the reset. And what we want to do is help you find IONS and this virtual conference and ISCO as a way for you to open up yourself to all that you can be. And thank you, Chuck, so much.
And I would put in a little plug for Kevin Tedeschi, our stellar speaker this Saturday, who's from the ARE, the Edgar Cayce Foundation.
Uh-huh.
And I have asked these speakers to share their path, how the information they encountered changed their lives. Not so much to be there telling us about Edgar Cayce and everything that he was, but how did that affect this individual? And Kevin has agreed that he's going to talk about how encountering the Edgar Cayce material just totally transformed his consciousness.
Right. This is great. See, we can fill our time with the fear of the television and what's happening next and how strange these choices are, or we can fill ourselves with this. So I just want to encourage all my listeners to give yourself the gift of this. I think you'll be glad that you learned about it and that you made that choice. So thank you, Chuck. We're out of time. We're going to have to sign off. Thank you so much. This was delightful.
Well, thank you so much for making this opportunity.
Oh, sure.
Bless you. Bless you.
Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye. Have a great day. Thanks, Chuck. I'll talk to you.
Bye.